Beyoncé's Daddy Lessons, from her 2016 visual album Lemonade, employs various musical and poetic tropes to come to grips with a familiar topic from her body of work, the relationship between a father and a daughter. Whereas her 2003 song Daddy from her first album extolled the virtues of the father in the manner of near idolatry, proclaiming that she treasures every irreplaceable memory and that she wants her unborn son and husband to be like her daddy. Daddy Lessons takes a far more circumspect view of a recently deceased father and the impact he left on his daughter. The song begins by musically positioning Beyoncé between the almost mythical or even Southern Gothic figures of her mother and father through allusions to music emanating from the histories of their hometowns. The presence of Beyoncé's mother is represented by the brassy counterpoint of a New Orleans marching band. Toward the end of this introductory passage, Beyoncé intones the word Texas, her father's home state, and the guitar that had underpinned the brass band moves to the foreground. The acoustic guitar, inflected with elements of the blues perhaps, performs a series of open chords marked with percussive upstrokes connoting country music. The lyrics reinforce that stylistic illusion by exploring well-worn tropes of the defiant and proud Southerner who likes his whiskey with his tea, who reveres the Second Amendment, and who swears on the Bible while his right hand remains on his rifle. This father is world-wise and world-weary. He recognizes himself as a morally compromised figure, advising his daughter that if a man like him should come to town, she is meant to shoot. He raises his daughter to be tough and to handle a gun. She is proud of these daddy lessons, and yet, through lines like, "Daddy made me fight, it wasn't always right," the lyrics signal her realization that her father isn't an example of unblemished rectitude. There may even be the implication, as one finds in innumerable Western films, that his ethical fallibility contributes in some unquantifiable manner to his heroic stature. This is not the simple adulation displayed in the earlier song Daddy, but in Daddy Lessons we still have an ode of veneration to the father. The song is constructed from very simple open chords: A minor, C major, G major, and F. Now, those chords and that set of relationships has a long history, obviously, in popular music. It goes back to at least the 50s, not in that order, but in the order of 1, 6, 4, 5. This is the doo-wop progression. Right, that kind of thing. What happens in the later part of the 20th century, starting really in the 80s and 90s, is instead of that progression, which sounds a little dated, especially with the idea of that dominant going right back to the tonic, those chords get reordered so that you have 1, 5, 6, 4. And there are a ton of songs that use that progression. There are whole websites dedicated to listing these songs. Notice that part of what happens with this progression is that we get this move from 4 back to 1, which seems less propulsive and less kind of cliched than the 5 to 1 movement. It also allows for a series of different voice leading progressions within the melody. Obviously, you can focus on moving up, for instance, from the C to the D as an upper neighbor, and then back down to the C, so you can have a melody that's really based around just that common tone of the C with just a neighbor. You can also have voice leading that moves up the scale, and a bunch of other options. Another option is to just start on the 6th chord, so that you go from the A to the F, the C to the G. This was an option used by quite a few female singer-songwriters in the 1990s, so much so that it's sometimes dubbed the Lilith Fair progression because so many artists associated with that festival employed it. Notice that now the progression's in A minor, more or less, so we can, instead of thinking of it as 6, 4, 1, 5, we can just think of it as 1, the A minor now being 1, to a 6, 3, 7. The Daddy Lesson progression is also in A minor, but it rearranges the chords a little bit. So we're going from A minor to C to the G to the F. Now notice the relationships involved here. The C, in one way, is just the upper third of that A minor. And then that G passes us down from the A minor complex, the A and C, through to the F. And of course the F has two common tones with the A. So when we go from A minor to C, we're sharing two common tones, C and E. And when we move from A minor to F, we're sharing two common tones, A and C. So the progression doesn't have a whole lot of variety in that sense. It's really based around the sonority of the A minor. Beyonce's vocal line reinforces this solidity of the A minor. Notice that what she sings here is just walking up the A minor scale and returning down to that A. What we do is we get as far as the D, but we collapse back to the A. That happens again. And then we get all the way up to the E to walk back to the A. So ultimately, the entire melody of that opening part is just outlining the A up to the E and back, and it gets stalled twice on the D. In a similar fashion, the pre-chorus melody also basically ignores the chord progression, just playing things that fit over an A minor chord. So we get the 5th scale degree to the 1st scale degree, and then a neighbor figure on the 3rd scale degree. Now all that's against that moving bass. But notice that the chords, in a sense, don't matter. The melody just stays firmly in A minor while the chords move from chord to chord. The chorus pays a little more attention to the 9 A minor chords, but it's still mostly outlined in A minor. It starts with the 5th of the chord, and then gets up to that octave, and then outlines the C, giving some support to that D there, the 4th degree, and then does it again. But this time, we get the E, G, G sharp, A for a more firm cadence. Perhaps there's an almost symbolic way we could read all of this. The chord progression cycles through, and yet most of the melody line simply ignores it. It just maintains in this presence of A. Life goes on, and yet she maintains this adulation of the father, who attains this almost iconic status, at least in her memory, if not in reality.